One of the common causes of failure of landscape trees and shrubs are plants that are left in the container too long. Sometimes we call that container-bound plants. By whatever name we use, it's common to see more or less the same result. Plants that have small root systems that are unable to sustain the tops of the plants. The plant is said to be out of balance. There is too little root for the tops of the plant. Thus, some of the symptoms that we could expect to see with a pot-bound plant, a container-bound plant, a plant whose root system has been in the container too long, are weak tops, leaves that tend to turn yellow or remain small or stunted, unthrifty looking, leaves that fall off, branches that tend to die back from the tips. These are all common symptoms of pot-bound plants. Here are some examples that I've accumulated to show. Let's start with the one here on my left and your right. This is a small shrub, a brittle bush that was left in the pot too long, planted in the ground, and never did become a healthy growing plant. We see a symptom here where the top of the branch, this is all dead wood here. There will be some leaves that are frozen here a little bit further down, closer to the trunk, but the stems near the ends are all brittle and brown. And that was the way it came into the office, indicating that the plant was dying from the top back. Typically, a person who owns a plant like this will tend to nip off the dead wood, and the smaller the plant gets, the more ugly it appears, until finally they take it out, dig it up, and find what the real problem was, where the roots are small and bending as though they were growing on the inside of a container. This particular plant, its root system is particularly bad, and we can see why that plant failed. Here are some other examples too. Here's an example of a Palo Verde tree that was left in the ground too long. We see the root that comes out actually tends to do a 180-degree turn. Comes out, it should continue out in this direction, but actually bends back in. It was in the pot too long. Here's another example on this side of that particular plant where the root tended to come out, but now it has done another 180 and is growing in this direction. These types of plants are never thrifty, always are weak, and eventually are going to fail. Here's an African sumac tree with the same kind of a problem. You can see the tight root system and the basket. And of course this other African sumac tree with its challenge here, I'll lift it up so that you can see where the roots again match the size of the inside of the container. These are very common examples, but one that was actually extreme was one of an Afghanistan pine that was brought in. Afghanistan pines typically are 30, 40 feet tall and within 10 years of growing. This example here is one that in 10 years of growth actually grow about 14 inches. And the reason, of course, is that the roots stayed in the container too long. To solve these kinds of problems, it's important to pick the best plants that we can. And it's hard to do that because when you choose a plant in a nursery, you can't pull the container off and start looking at the roots. It's not considered good form, and it's really not good for the plant. Don't recommend that at all. But we can ask the nursery assistant to help us figure out whether the plant is healthy, and that's one of the questions that we should ask. How long has this container been in the ground, in the container? How long has this plant been in the container? And how can we best know whether I'm getting a good plant? If all else fails, and I get the plant home and I take the container off and start before planting, if I will check the roots and make sure that they are not encircling inside the container, I'll have a better chance to have a healthy plant. Now some people say that it's, and have tested, that if we come in and score, take a saw and cut straight down through these roots, these girdling roots, maybe on the four corners. That seems a little harsh to me, but with a plant like this, it's not going to survive at all in this kind of a situation. It'll never be what we want it to be. So it's probably a last resort would be to try that drastic root cutting technique. Better choice is just to make sure that you don't get a bad tree. Work with the nursery people, and if you do get one, take it back and get a better one the next time.